All right, so let's start with the big story that we are tracking on WION at this hour. Now, Russia has continued with its relentless aerial attacks on Ukraine for a second night in a row. Now, throughout last night, this escalation is, of course, testing the limits of Ukrainian air defenses and is pushing civilians into underground shelters. In the wee hours of this morning, the Russian forces launched a fresh assault on Kyiv using at least about 18 missiles and more than 400 drones in what the officials have described as another night of terror. At least about 2 people are reported to be killed, 16 others have been injured, multiple fires have been reported after debris struck both residential apartments and non-residential buildings. Now, Ukraine's Air Force managed to intercept the majority of the incoming threats, but the sheer volume of strikes is increasingly overwhelming. Now, explosions, in fact, lit up the skies over Kyiv as families scrambled for safety, many of them spending hours in bomb shelters.
This is terror. It is happening every night while people are sleeping and most people are in their apartments, in their beds. From my own experience, I never went to a shelter. I thought that fate would spare me, like many people do. You know, a direct hit on an apartment block is like putting a gun to your head and shooting.
A missile attack, a Shahed drone, a ballistic attack by Russia on Kyiv, on Ukraine in general, but on Kyiv in particular. I went down to the metro station so as not to listen to all this at home, to protect myself a little and increase my chances of survival.
The latest barrage of attacks comes just a day after the Russian forces launched over 700 missiles and drones. Ukraine says that this, in fact, is the largest attack in the 3-year-long war. Now, speaking in Rome at the Ukraine Recovery Conference, Zelensky has urged allies to increase the defense investment. He said, and I quote him here, "We must stop Russian drones and missiles. When Russia increases its attacks, we cannot afford a shortage of funding." So, as Moscow's increasing attacks on Ukraine, which raises a number of questions about whether Putin's seriousness about a peace deal. Rubio and Foreign Secretary Sergei Lavrov met in Kuala Lumpur for the ASEAN summit. This meeting comes shortly after the US resumed some shipments of defensive weapons to Ukraine following a brief pause. Meanwhile, the Kremlin has said that Russia does not think peace talks on Ukraine have stalled and that it still wants to achieve its goals through peaceful political and diplomatic means. All right, now joining us in the broadcast, we've got Ms. Alina Trijup, who is a Secretary General and also an independent Defence and Anti-Corruption Committee. Ms. Trijup, thank you very much indeed for joining us here on this broadcast and beyond. Now, looking at what's in fact happening on the battlefield, and then to contrast that with the Russian statement where they say that they do not believe that diplomacy has been buried and that they still think that diplomacy has a chance in this war. In your assessment, what is Russia doing here? Why is it that Russia has increased its attacks on Ukraine in the last week?
Well, it is very clear that Russia is just using negotiations as a pretext in order to intensify attacks on Ukraine and break the will of Ukrainian people to resist. Russia used this because President Trump started delaying defensive weapons to Ukraine. President Trump started questioning whether America will help Ukraine after Biden aid package runs out, whether he will even sell Patriot missiles to Ukraine. All that Russia saw as a moment of weakness And Russia decided that this is a good time to hammer Ukraine with all those missiles and drones. And they also thought that this is a good time to have summer offensive on the front line. However, that offensive didn't work out for them. They only take around 15 square kilometers per day. And at this pace, Russia will invade Ukraine in around 90 years from now. So that's why they now use these terror tactics, and it's obviously that Russia is not ready for peace, because they themselves said, we will have peace only when we eliminate the root cause of this war. And the root cause of this war is existence of Ukraine.
Right. Now, you're joining us from Kyiv. So give us a sense of how Ukraine, in fact, looks at what the Americans have done under Donald Trump. Trump has used some pretty strong language against the Russian tactics in the recent past. But the fact that there is this meeting that has been held between Marco Rubio and also Sergei Lavrov on the sidelines of the ASEAN meeting, the Americans and the Russians seem to be getting closer despite the rhetoric. But on the battlefield, though, the United States, even though it is supporting Ukraine, diplomatically, Russia and the United States seem to be getting closer.
Well, I think that U.S., they have obligation to support Ukraine, and even if Donald Trump doesn't want to support Ukraine, they have to, because they are guarantor of our security when we give up nuclear weapon. Also, for them, it will be very bad to let Russia win in Ukraine. So I don't think that they will switch sides the way it can seem right now that they may switch side. It's just impossible to switch side, because what Russia is doing, it's against transatlantic community, it's against Europe, and Europe is ally of America. So unless America wants to stop being an ally of Europe, they cannot switch side. And of course, this rapprochement between Russia and America, obviously it didn't work out, because I absolutely don't see anything that US have achieved, but I see that Russia has achieved that they now can kill more people. That's the only achievement of this policy.
All right, we'll have to leave it there. Thank you very much indeed, Ms. Alina Trejeb, for joining us with that perspective there.
Thanks.